The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. Thanks for joining me this evening. I know I've got a lot of well wishes. I have been feeling bad. We started that show on Sunday, and I just couldn't continue. I was just the nausea was too overwhelming. I've been nauseous for 2 days now, 2.5 days. It still hasn't gone away, but it's definitely better than it was. I just took a shot of ginger. Ginger helps a little bit with nausea. So hopefully it'll allow me to get through the show without, certainly without throwing up. That won't happen without me having to slow down, go do something else or anything. So hopefully this will keep us going. Or keep me going. You guys aren't sick. You guys are fine. But you know, since then I've given lectures and done meetings, and you know, work continues. It's there's no opportunities to really slow down and stop in this business. You've got to keep plugging along. So we continue to do that. All right, today we're gonna do what I intended to do on Sunday, which is to talk about integrity. So we'll talk about integrity today, which is part 7 of our series that Troy has funded sponsored to cover the kind of the application of objectivism, particularly in ethics, the application of the objectivist ethics in both life and business. And today we will do integrity. The next show in this will be a show on pride. I really hope everybody shows up for pride. I hope you guys encourage other people to, thank you, that's really generous, to come to the Pride Show. The Pride Show is going to have a big match, both for Super Chat and for the number of likes. So it's going to be important to get our numbers up so we get enough people watching the show so we can get to 250 likes. We're going to have a $1,000 match and a $1,000 match for the likes. So I'm really hoping a lot of you will come and you'll bring your friends. I think it'll be a good show. Pride is a great virtue to talk about and counterintuitive for so many people because we've been taught since we were very little about that pride is a vice, not a virtue. So we'll talk about what Ayn Rand means by pride being a virtue. And we will, so that's going to be good. And then after that, we're going to do a show about the Christian virtues and vices. So we're going to take the 7 deadly sins. We're going to talk about, are they deadly and are they sins? And that'll be a fun show. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a blast. I'm sure. I think there are a number of those sins that I embrace and advocate for. So that is going to be fun. I look forward to doing that. So I hope you join me. Let's see, what else do we have? Tomorrow we're doing part 2 of the reset, the Great Reset, the left agenda to kind of change the world and move us towards fascism. So we'll talk, I don't have a date yet for Pride, but Pride, if I had to guess right now, it will be on Monday, next Monday, depending on what else happens in the week. So either Monday or Tuesday of next week. But I will try to post about it in advance and have it on YouTube in advance up. So tomorrow we're going to do part 3 of the Great Reset. I encourage all of you to listen. It gives you intellectual ammunition against kind of what is coming, the evil that people in this new administration and people all over the world are planning for all of us. Hopefully, I don't think they'll succeed because I think they're too incompetent and too inconsistent to succeed. But But that would be one. But that would be what we do tomorrow. And then Saturday is going to be exciting because Saturday we are doing part 4 of the Great Reset, and that's going to be on climate change. So tomorrow is going to be about inequality, which I wrote a book about, Equal is Unfair. On Saturday, the show is going to be about climate change, and I've invited Alex Epstein to join me. So Alex will be here, and Alex and I will be, trying to dig deep into both climate change, into the agenda of the World Economic Forum regarding climate change, maybe a little projection about what the Biden administration is probably going to do about climate change, what the meaning is and the impact of us rejoining the Paris Accord, which I expect the Biden administration to do. So we'll be discussing climate change with Alex Epstein on Saturday. Then we'll be doing a contributor Q&A on Sunday, and then Pride will either be Monday or Tuesday of next week. I think that's right. And I might add a show on Friday to talk about, current events. We haven't talked about politics in a while. There's a little bit of stuff going on, nothing really that exciting for me, but a little bit of stuff going on, and we'll talk about maybe the state of the world, politics, stuff like that on Friday. As much as it all kind of, in a sense, bores me, we should cover it. We should do something about it. So Jason wants to do a $3,000 super chat match for a New Year's Eve show. So here's the deal. I'm willing to do a New Year's Eve show. Happy to do a New Year's Eve show. Even happy to do a $3,000 match. The real question is Jason going to do the $3,000 match? Are you volunteering to match $3,000 raised during a New Year's Eve show? If not, then I guess what Jason is doing is it's an open call to anybody else who would like to match the $3,000 for New Year's Eve. Or I can just pretend that there's a $3,000 match just to get you to contribute. But I wouldn't do that because there's something about honesty or something. We've got now a suggestion of $5,000 for a New Year's Eve match. All right, it's up to one of you to come forward and say, I will match $3,000, $5,000, $2,000, whatever it is you want. And if you do a match of that size, I will do a New Year's Eve match. We will do a recap of at least in the last 30 years, maybe longer than that, the worst year I have had. So we will recap 2020. We will say goodbye to it. We will celebrate the fact that it's over and that there is a new year dawning, and it'll be a lot of fun. But I'll do a show on public choice theory. So Ruther, if you're willing to put instead of doing a $5,000 match for public choice theory, just offer $1,000. $1,000, you get to choose the topic. So for $1,000, you guys get to choose the topic. If you want me to do public choice theory, just go to paypal.me, make a contribution of $1,000, and I will do public choice theory. So just make a note that the $1,000 came from you, and we can do public choice theory. All right? So I'm writing it down. So if I see something coming from you, anyway, yes, good riddance to 2020. Bring on 2021 quickly. But yes, anybody can pick a topic, within reason, something I actually know something about. And I'd be happy to discuss that topic, and that costs $1,000. And you can do that on PayPal, paypal.me, and just note the topic that you want, $1,000, and we'll do that. I'll review any movie you want for $500, and you can do that again on paypal.me, and just put a note of what movie you want. And of course, we're still looking for somebody to step forward for that big $3,000 or $5,000 match on New Year's Eve. I've noticed Jason has gone silent since I suggested maybe he would do the match. But Jason is a massive Super Chat contributor, so he helps us get to those big numbers every single time. So no complaints here. All right, thank you, Christian. Thank you, Michael. I'll get to that question later. But the short answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've got 3 Super Chat questions getting ready, but we're going to leave those for later after I talk about integrity. All right, I think that's all the admin stuff we have. Yeah, I think that's it. As I said, a show tomorrow, a show maybe on Friday, certainly on Saturday, certainly on Sunday, and then early next week. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Integrity. Integrity. Virtue number 6. We've only got 1 to go. Integrity. To quote Galt's speech, integrity is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake your consciousness. Now that is not an easy definition to understand. It's not an easy definition to understand. So we're gonna kind of move slowly through that. Leonard, the subtitle in OPA, and by the way, everybody, all of you, should own a copy of Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. You should all read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. Where does money go from match? It all goes to me. You can do a match on, we usually do the match here on Super Chat, but you can also do the match on PayPal.me. So /Yaron Brook Show. All right. Everybody should own a copy of OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. It is the definitive book about a systematization of objectivism. You get the whole package. You get it all day. You get it in the best articulation I think possible. It is, Ayn Rand covers all the material in OPA, but she covers it in a variety of different places. And it's systematized, organized, and with Leonard Peikoff's genius, to integrate, to connect, and to simplify it, to put it in language that I think is understandable to any serious student, anybody who's really willing to delve into it and really dig and try to understand and really understand what this is about. So I highly, highly recommend anybody who's interested in studying objectivism, understanding objectivism, knowing objectivism, applying objectivism to their own life. I think that Leonard Peikoff's OPA, Objectivism, Philosophy of Ayn Rand, is a must read, a must read. I think in a way you can take the courses, and you should take all the courses, but to get it in one place in writing where you can underline and you can read again and you can integrate and you can do it slowly at your own place, that, you can't, there's nothing like OPA. So we're also, the next Objectivist conference this coming summer of 2021, assuming we'll be able to do the conference, is dedicated to OPA. So I hope many of you come. We're celebrating OPA. It'll be 30 years to the publication of OPA. I remember getting my copy 30 years ago, 29 years ago, and we did a study group. It took us a year to go over OPA in the study group. All right, let's see. So integrity. So in the subheading, under integrity, let me just correct something here one second. Sorry, we are. So under integrity, it says, integrity is loyalty to rational principles. Integrity is loyalty to rational principles. So note here that integrity is not loyalty to any principles. It's not just following your principles. It's not just doing what you say. It's doing the rational thing. It's following your rational principles. It's being dedicated to and consistent with and not compromising. We'll get to compromise in a minute. And not compromising on your rational principles. And it's really, really important. That integrity out there in the world means, do what you say. But here it's more than that. It means make sure that what you say is the rational. What your convictions are, what your principles are, is rational. Because integrity has to fit in with all the other virtues. It is, again, an aspect of rationality. It's an aspect of being rational, being independent, being honest. So your principles, your convictions need to be rational. And then it's being loyal to them in action. In action and in deed and in every aspect of them. It's the idea that don't believe in these ideas. Don't just believe in these ideas. Don't just accept them. You have to live them. They're meaningless unless they are lived. And you are not being moral unless you live morality, unless you live these principles. Leonard defines integrity as loyalty in action to one's convictions and values. And in our context, in the context of objectivism, rational convictions, rational values. Loyalty in action. Integrity is kind of the virtue that provides an integration of mind and body. It's not enough just to preach, to think, to have convictions. The integration of mind and body means that one needs to act on the thoughts, to live one's convictions. Having knowledge, just having, is not enough if you're then going to ignore that knowledge when acting. So it means taking seriously what you know to be true, what you know to be right, what you know to be life-enhancing, and following through on that. You have to be in focus, make the mental effort to think, come to conclusions, prove to yourself that those conclusions are right, true, and then act on it. Jennifer says, don't just talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. Absolutely. And you have to recognize that these are, everything we're talking about, all these virtues are principles. They're not, you do it sometimes. It's a principle. You're committed to the principle. Right? You don't compromise on it. So you have to, one, learn the proper principles, discover the truth, and act on it. I love this formulation of Lenin's. Integrity isolates this aspect of the moral life. I'm quoting from Opa. It is the virtue of acting as an absolute on rational principle. Acting as an absolute on rational principle. And this is the sentence, this is classic Leonard, it's brilliant. It is the principle of being principled. Integrity is the reminder, be principled. Don't compromise. Don't evade. Don't ignore. Here's the principle. Follow it. You've already proved this. You know this is right. Now do it. And of course, like with rationality, it means you don't let emotions get in the way. You don't let emotions dictate your actions. You let your knowledge dictate your actions. You let your principles dictate your actions. Now again, proper principles, rational principles, principles that you have already proved to yourself. And that's what Rand means by, I think, she says integrity is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake your consciousness. What does faking your consciousness mean? Faking your consciousness means I'm going to think one thing, but I'm going to do something else. I'm going to hold these as principles, and then I'm going to sell them out. You can't fake your consciousness. if you hold these as truths and you act opposite, you know that. You will suffer the consequence of it. You will undermine all of your morality, all of your ethics. You will undermine all the virtues. You undermine your life. You undermine your existence, your survival. You cannot act in a different way than you think if you're going to be happy, if you're going to be successful at living. Rand says, man is an indivisible entity, an integrated unit of two attributes, of matter and consciousness, and that he may permit no breach between body and mind, between action and thought, between his life and his convictions. And you have to put aside emotions. You have to put aside other people's emotions, thoughts, pressure on you. The principle of being principled. You have to stick to the principle. And, sometimes this is viewed as requiring courage. And I think courage is in a sense, a sub-virtue under integrity. It's an aspect of integrity. To act on your convictions sometimes means to act in ways that are difficult, in ways that are challenging, in ways that put you up against other people, against vast odds, against, people maybe even that you care about, and certainly sometimes put you up against your own emotions. But, courageous we must be if we are to be successful at living. I think I know Ayn Rand said once, she said, somebody asked her, or somebody praised her courage in fighting the establishment, right? And she said, and this is a quote, a great quote, "I'm not brave enough to be a coward. I see the consequences too clearly." So think about it. If you understand that, rationality is required for success, that rationality is required for happiness, that all these virtues are required, and if you have come to certain conclusions about life and about how you want to live your life and how you should live your life and how you need to live your life, and you understand fully the consequences of not doing that, of not living a rational life, not being honest, not being independent, if you understand the horrific consequences of that, the destruction that causes to you, if you understand what I always say, again, a cliche, that you only live once, that you never get your minutes back, that you never get a minute of life back, that life is this precious, very short thing that you have, then how could you act against your convictions? How can you act against your knowledge of what will lead to a good life? How can you act for destruction, for your own destruction? If you fully integrate the objectivist ethics, then you understand that acting against them, any one of them, is to destroy your own life. And it should be easy. As Ayn Rand says, it doesn't take courage. I understand the consequences of not doing it, of not speaking up, of not standing up, of not fighting for my values, of not fighting for my convictions, of not living by the principles I prove to myself will make my life a good life. So, integrity just is the articulation of that commitment. The commitment to act on convictions, the commitment to live based on your rational mind. Not just to think it, but to do it. It's to live based on your values. If you've created a hierarchy of values, live that hierarchy. Go for the things that are most important to you. Live by that. Act on it. Now, objectivism is unique here, I think. Because of the way we have come at these virtues, and because of the way Ayn Rand, in a sense, constructs her ethics, right? The ethics are guides to action in this world. Action aimed at success. They are, in a sense, induced from understanding history, understanding human nature, and looking out into the world and seeing human beings act. And we look and we see, oh, these things are successful. Human values, oh, they require thinking. They require reason. They require being rational. Oh, people who have no purpose, they drift, they're aimless, and they can't choose between values, and they land up very unhappy. Yeah, purpose. You need a purpose. That's a value because it's required for human happiness. It's necessary. It's a function both of observing the world, in a sense, what works, and then integrating that with our understanding of human nature, of man as a rational being, of man possessing free will. So partially what integrity does is it reminds us that the moral is the practical. That if you follow these virtues, if you live a moral life, if you actually live it, act it, then you will be successful. Now think about other systems of morality. The virtues are not aligned with reality. They're not aligned with success because the purpose of these morality, the codes of morality, is not success. You are told to sacrifice. Well, if you really want to do that consistently without compromise, with, in a sense, integrity, in quotes, then you must sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice, and there's no end to it, and the end is death. But you're not going to benefit from it. There's no upside. There's no enhanced life. You should have integrity. Why? Because we told you so. Not because the actions lead to something good. I mean, they lead to something good within their context, which is your suffering. But objectivism is a philosophy of happiness. It's a morality of happiness. The goal is to live a good life. If you follow integrity, you will be successful in life. And there's a reason, because we know that to be successful in life, one has to use your mind. But using your mind is not enough. One has to act on the things you discover using your mind. So acting on it leads to a successful life. The moral is the practical. And the practical, that which works out there, is moral. So, no other morality could say that. I mean, if you think about Christianity, this is again from Opa. He's quoting Paul, right? Paul in Christianity. I do not understand what I am doing. I can will, but I cannot do what is right. I do not do the good things that I want to do. I do the things that I do not want to do. What a wretched man I am. Right? We've got all these impulses, for example, impulses for pleasure. Well, pleasure in objectivism is a good thing in the appropriate context. If you're not sacrificing for it. Pleasure is a good thing, but pleasure to Christian is bad. So I'm tempted by this pleasure. I'm supposed to stop it. I'm supposed to just sacrifice. I'm supposed to live God's life. I'm supposed to not enjoy myself, not be happy, not be successful. And I can't help myself. So integrity is impossible. I can't actually live this way. It'll kill me. I mean, who was it? Augustine. He used to have these strong sexual desires, and he used to whip himself to stop them. He couldn't control it. I mean, that's not a life of integrity. You can't. I'm supposed to not feel these sexual desires, but I do. So I have to punish myself for it, to roll around in the snow, in the cold, in order to stop this. I mean, what a horrible view of mankind, what a horrible view of morality that is. It's anti-life, anti-success, anti-happiness, and therefore integrity is impossible to it, because integrity, see, the virtues and values that they present are anti-life. The virtues and values that they present are anti-success. So if you were consistent in them, if you practiced them consistently, you would be miserable and ultimately you would be dead. And people don't actually want to be miserable. So for objectivists, it's not like, oh, damn, I have to do what I actually believe. No, what I believe is wonderful. What I believe is amazing. What I believe is pro my life. So it's great to do what I believe, because I know that good things will come of it. So in that sense, integrity is easy for an objectivist. It's easy in objectivism, and it's impossible outside of objectivism. It's exactly that point that Ayn Rand makes. I'm not brave enough to be a coward. I see the consequences too clearly. I'm not brave enough to go against reality. I'm not brave enough to go against my convictions. I'm not brave enough to go against morality. I'm not brave enough to go against what I know is true, because I see the consequences. I know what will happen if I do it. And what will happen if I do it is I get destroyed. So the motivation in a Christian morality has to be duty. You have to do it. It has to be an afterlife. We have to promise you something, because in this life, you cannot be rewarded. You cannot have any benefit. The whole point is the opposite of benefit. All right, let's see. So that's, I think, essentially what integrity means. And I think generally, a lot of us, the difficulty we all have in applying morality is overcoming emotions, overcoming social pressure, what our friends want us to do. You know, and you see that with kids. They often know what their friends want them to do is wrong. They don't really want to do it, and then they go ahead and do it anyway. And you see it in adults. It's sadder in adults, because adults should know better and have a stronger willpower. But the more you integrate your ideas, your principles, the more you integrate your moral virtues and values, the easier it becomes. The more straightforward it becomes, because you understand the consequences of not doing it. And you know the benefits of doing it. You know the rewards that come from living a virtuous life. All right, I want to talk a little bit about compromise and what's meant by compromise, and why compromise, about morality at least, about important things, is evil. I mean, it's the point I just made in a sense. But I want to remind everybody before you leave, there's a lot of people coming and going kind of thing. Remind you just to like the show before you leave. It's really, really helpful. If we can get the likes up, we're at about, 70 now. Hopefully we can get that up to over 100 here pretty quickly. Generally, you know, as I said, the show on Pride, in order to get our match, we're going to have to get to 250 likes. And this is why I'm going to need your help in getting more people to show up, more people to come and join the show. So we get 250 likes. We need to have 300 plus people listening live. in order to get there. Actually, you need probably about 700 people listening live in order to get 250 likes. So please help me get more people to come. Go over to Twitter, go over to other places, and send them over here, particularly for the Pride show, but of course for all the shows. So what is a compromise? Compromise is an adjustment of conflicting claims by mutual concession. So there's no coercion in a compromise. There's no force in a compromise. There are two conflicting ideas, and there's a settlement that both agree to. If there's no settlement, if there's no agreement, it doesn't happen. All right, so now there are lots of different types of compromises. There are lots of different types of compromises. There are regular compromises that are completely legitimate. I mean, obviously a compromise like that would be something like, thank you, wow, I'm on a roll today. A compromise could be between two people who, one wants to sell the automobile, one wants to buy the automobile. They have a difference of opinion about the price, and they compromise somewhere in the middle, and they settle. A lot of trading is done through compromise, and that's fine. You shouldn't buy the car unless you believe you're better off by buying it. That is, unless you have traded something for something bigger, so you haven't sacrificed. And they shouldn't sell the car unless they get a price that they think is going to be high enough to make it worth their while. So trading is a completely legitimate compromise. I don't know. You want to go out to a restaurant, your wife wants Chinese, you want Italian. You're not excited about Chinese, but you know what? You can eat Italian another night, and it's not a big deal, and it's your wife. And, maybe you compromise on French or sushi or something, or maybe you just go with Chinese. You're not giving up anything. You're not worse off as a consequence. Just your preference tonight would have been Italian. You could do Italian another time. That is a compromise that's fine. There's no principle. I must eat the exact food that I must eat when I want it. When you're with you and other people, you're in a relationship, there are things you're going to have to compromise on. What don't you compromise on? You can make concessions about everyday things, right? As long as the framework, right, is a rational framework that's agreed upon. Generally, we're trading. We're choosing restaurants, and sometimes we'll do this, and sometimes we'll do this, and some will follow yours, and sometimes we'll follow somebody else's preference. That's all within a voluntary, but it's more importantly, it's within a context that is all rational and does not involve sacrifice. It does not involve anybody losing anything. Where one should never compromise is on principles. On principles. Moral principles and other principles. Yes, I definitely know she's good for it. And, all right, so we have a $5,000 match for New Year's Eve. So I'm now committed to doing a show New Year's Eve. We'll do a $5,000 match. And I guess what we'll do is the show will go on until we raise the $5,000. Now, I don't want you on purpose to hold back the money so we have a very long show. But we will keep going until we get to it. So thank you. That is amazing, 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 amazing. And so New Year's Eve, write it down. Probably, where am I going to be New Year's Eve? I need to figure out where I'm going to be. I think I'll be in California on New Year's Eve because I'm finally selling my house in California, and I'm going to go over there to be packing. I'll be packing. So New Year's Eve, I'll be in California. So let's make it, what do we make it? 5 p.m. California time. So we'll start at 5 p.m. California time, and we'll keep going until we reach the 5,000. And we have a match for every dollar up to $5,000. That is pretty cool. That's exciting. That deserves a few thumbs up. Get me to 100 over there. We're at 92. Another 8 thumbs up, and we're at 100. All right. Great. That's exciting. All right. So we got a bunch of matches lined up. We've got the match on Pride, and then we've got the match on New Year's Eve. So, okay, I'll cap it at 4 hours. So from 5 max to 9. We're not going to go over 9 p.m. If we can't raise $5,000 in 4 hours, then it's hopeless. All right. We will make it. We will make it. All right. So I'm not committing to going to 9 p.m. I'm just saying if needed, we'll go to 9 p.m. Right? No, I can't do midnight. I mean, we'll start at 5. I guess 9 p.m. 9 p.m. will be midnight on the East Coast, right? So to be midnight on the East Coast, we'll go. That will be at the extreme, right? That'll be if it's slow, right? Thank you. That's amazing. All right. Brian's a man on a mission. Now that I know there will be a match, I will be looking for new ways to increase my income from now until then. I love it that people are now working hard to do matches on Super Chat. I wonder if other like hosts of shows on YouTube do these Super Chat matching things. I think we've invented a new thing, right? I think we've invented a new thing, and it's obviously super lucrative and super fun, and yeah, it's great. You can celebrate the last day of 2020 should be a good financial day because suddenly 2020 did not start off good financially. Middle was not very good financially. It's pretty good. The last couple of months have been pretty good, and I'm very hopeful for December. So I think the year will land up the year in really good shape, and it would be symbolic and really meaningful to do a fantastic super chat matching. All right, so we're on $5,000 on New Year's Eve. Let's hope the restaurants, she writes, you need to take your wife to a nice dinner on New Year's. I do, but let's hope the restaurants are open New Year's Eve. You know, the way things are going now. Los Angeles restaurants are not allowed to serve indoor or outdoor. They're closed even outdoor. They only take out. So Orange County, where I still have a house in California, you can still do, I think, outdoor dining, no indoor dining. Let's hope that by New Year's, they'll be back to indoor dining. We'll see. All right, let's see. Where are we? Compromise. What does one not compromise on? Well, certainly one does not compromise on moral principles. Every discussion we've had about these principles, we've discussed about how important they are for your success, how important they are for your ability to thrive, for your ability to survive, and ultimately to be happy, to be successful. So why compromise on something like that? Means that you're giving up on happiness. Means that you're giving up on having a successful life. I mean, think about lying. The compromise in lying is, I'll lie some of the time. But every lie is destructive. Every lie sets you up against yourself, against reality, against your life, against your happiness. Every lie. So you're saying, once in a while I'll take a little bit of poison. Not every day, not all the time. I'll compromise. Nobody who respects his life, nobody who values his life, nobody who values life would ever do that. You don't take a little bit of cyanide, just a little bit, just to make me sick, won't kill me. I mean, you have to be sick in the head to follow that path. So with morality, we understand, or should understand, that since The virtues are linked to our survival and ultimately linked to our happiness, linked to our success in life. Any deviation from them is destructive. Any deviation from them sets us back. But take other principles. I mean, I'll pick one. Take the principle of free trade from politics. We have, over the last 250 years, basically established, I mean, it was established by Adam Smith and then reaffirmed and reestablished and reaffirmed over and over again, that free trade, unilateral free trade, is the best economic and, by the way, social policy one can imagine. It is the one that protects individual rights, protects individual freedom, protects individual choice. And it, from an economic perspective, it just leads to the most prosperity, most choices, the most freedom. Has nothing to do with Trump, right? Leonard Peikoff uses this example in why one should act on, what's the name of that? It's principles, why we should act on principle, why one should act on principle. It's, I think, one of his best lectures. It's on YouTube. It's a Fort Forum lecture from the 80s. And it's, it's really, really brilliant. You can read the essay, and I recommend reading the essay. But it's really worthwhile listening to the talk because Leonard is such a brilliant speaker. And it's so entertaining. And he's so connected with the audience. And it really is a brilliant talk. So I highly recommend it on YouTube, Why We Should Act on Principle, from Fort Forum in the 1980s. So just put Leonard Peikoff principle and you'll get it. And he gives this example of free trade, which applies to Trump, but also applied to Ronald Reagan and George Bush. So I'd say there's this principle of free trade. You know that this is true. But the Japanese, and I'll use straight Leonard's example, although I could, well, let's update the example. Let's use it from the era of Trump. The steel manufacturers come to you as president, and they say, look, we're losing jobs. We're going to have to close a couple of plants. The Chinese steel, we just basically can't compete. It's much cheaper than ours. They subsidize it. You know, you could come up with whatever excuses you want. And it's not just the Chinese, it's steel from Brazil and steel from Canada. And we're just going to have to lay people off and shut down. Now, if you were principled, you would say, look, I understand. I'm sorry that you have to lay people off. I'm sorry that the industries, you're going to have to shrink. But long term, you're going to be better off in a country that doesn't have tariffs, in a country that doesn't violate the principle of free trade, because we know this is a principle. We know it works. We know it's right. Suck it up. This is what I told this guy, was it a week, 2 weeks ago when I was in Colorado, where he said, but I'm a dairy farmer, and the Canadian dairy is cheaper because they subsidize it or something like that. And I go, yeah, but once you violate the principle of free trade, then there's no limit to it. Then okay, you are better off in a country of free trade. But imagine we say, okay, dairy farmer, we're going to protect you. And we're going to protect the steel industry. And we're going to protect the auto industry. And now that we protected the steel industry, the price of automobiles is more expensive because automobiles need steel in order to build them. They have to buy more expensive American steel, so their prices are higher. Now Japanese cars are cheaper, so we have to protect the automobile industry. And we have to protect the washing machine industry. Same thing, they use steel. And we have to protect every industry that uses steel. Every industry that uses steel. And now, it's not just this one case. Right? Now, we've basically got trade barriers all over the place. And the standard of living and quality of life of all Americans drops. Because we know we have a principle in economics of free trade. And once you violate it, it's gone. Once you violate it, you make things worse. And the principle of free trade doesn't matter what industry it is. It doesn't matter what country you're protecting against. It doesn't matter if you like them or you don't like them. It doesn't matter if the industry's small or big. It's a principle. And if you compromise on a principle, you've lost. You've lost. Whatever you were trying to protect, the standard of living of Americans, you lose. Take another example. Again, this is from Opa, but it applies to Trump. So what can I do? Trump is the ultimate compromiser, so it all applies to him. You know, here's the way he articulates it in Opa. He says, a country able to defend itself, which decides nevertheless to negotiate with an aggressor, agreeing to some of the latter's arbitrary demands in the name of being flexible and preserving peace. Now, who does that remind you of? Well, the brutal dictator of North Korea. We can defend ourselves. We don't need to grovel before the North Koreans. We don't need to compromise them. We don't need to give up anything to them. We don't need to sanction them. We have the mightiest military force in human history. We can defend ourselves. So why would we befriend such a monster? And what do we have to gain? And this is the important point about compromise. Ayn Rand says that in a compromise between good and evil, only evil can win. Now, why is that? Well, fundamentally, what is evil? Evil is the irrational. Evil is the anti-reality. Evil is the anti-productiveness. Evil is the anti-all these virtues. And as such, because evil is the irrational, evil is incompetent. Evil is unable to produce, to create, to build, to make, to win. It is self-destructive because it's irrational. It's detached from reality. So, in a compromise between good and evil, what can good get out of it from evil that it doesn't already have? What can the North Koreans give us that we can't already take? What do tariffs provide us that we don't already have? Evil is anti-life, and because it's anti-life, because it's irrational, it has nothing. It's the void. It's zero. It's negative. It has no contribution. So in a trade on a car, the car dealer and you are negotiating a price. He has something to give you. There is a value he's going to provide you. You're going to provide him with a value. It's a win-win relationship. A compromise, you can only lose. There's nothing for you to gain because there's no value that evil holds that you can get. Because evil, by definition, has no values. So, there's nothing for good to get. And what does evil want from good? Because good has everything. I mean, this is why America's rich, because it's basically being good. This is why it has a mighty military force, because it's basically being good. What does evil want? Evil wants recognition. It wants a sanction. It wants the goodies. It wants the help. It wants assistance. It wants the stuff that the good creates, that the good has. And it wants the good to give it up. Evil has nothing to lose because it's a loser already. So anybody with integrity does not compromise with evil, but does not compromise on his principles ever. You don't compromise on your moral virtues. You don't compromise on ethics. Evil is impotent. The good is productive. Leave evil alone. Leave evil ideas alone. They have nothing. They have nothing to add, no benefit to give you, to provide you. Every time you compromise with a principle, you're worse off. I gave the example of the tariffs. You compromise with the principle of free trade, the economy and the people in it, which is what's important, are worse off. And even the group originally that thought they were being protected are going to be worse off. And they might not have as much, it all boils down to pressure group politics once you accept tariffs and things like that. All boils down to pressure group politics. Who can put the most pressure on? It all devolves into favors and benefits and handouts and subsidies, and it has to. I mean, look at what happened under Trump. We put tariffs on China. They put tariffs on us primarily on agricultural products. So we provided subsidies to the farmers, right, which automatically distorts everything. We put tariffs on steel. Everybody in America who produces stuff from steel is now, again, worse off. So evil can only survive if good compromises with it. Evil can only have values if the good gives them to, sacrifices them to it. So to quote Ayn Rand, the rational, the good, has nothing to gain from the irrational. There's no trade possible. There's no benefit. The only thing he can gain, Rand writes, is a share of its failures and crimes. A share of its failures and crimes. All right. Now, again, to dig deeper into any of this, read Opa. Listen to Leonard Peikoff's Why We Should Act on Principle. Leonard has a talk on moral virtues, on integrity and honesty. Highly recommended. Highly, highly recommended. He talks a lot about this issue of compromise in that talk. So remember, all I'm doing here is giving you an introduction, giving you a beginning. And we haven't applied this really to business, but I think it's obvious, the application of business. Right? And when you tell your customers you're going to do X, do X. When you have a principle of making sure your products meet a certain level of quality, then don't release them until they meet that level of quality. When you have a principle about being honest to your suppliers, then don't lie to them. So a lot of businesses, a lot of companies have mission statements and value statements and all this stuff written down. It's on the wall. Everywhere you go, you see it on the wall. And then they ignore it. It doesn't matter. It's like the Christian virtues and values. Everybody knows them. Nobody practices them because they're not pro-reality. But when you make your value statement pro-reality, when you make your mission statement consistent with reality, in a sense, your mission statement is like your purpose in life, then if they're pro-profit, if they're pro-success, then of course you'll follow them. And this is the thing to do in business. The challenge is to show your employees, every single one of them, that your mission statement and your values are consistent with being successful, with them as employees being successful, and the company as a whole being successful. So you've got to integrate your mission statement, your value statement, with reality, with your success. That's why they're there. They're not just things you put on the wall to make everybody feel good. They're things to guide you, to help you steer a course. They're like your moral virtues, just apply to a business. They're there to steer you in the right direction, to guide you towards more profitability, better success, better customer service, better whatever it is that you do. So business must have integrity, but it first has to identify the right principles, the right values, the right mission statement. Only if the values and mission statement are consistent with reality, only if they are rational, only if they are focused on leading the company to success, but really to success. Not, again, to appease people, to appease your shareholders, to appease special interest groups, to appease the ESG or GGS or whatever, but to really actually lead you towards success. If you do that, then integrity is possible. Then you have to live up to that if you care about the success of your business. Yes, John Allison has a great talk about how he integrated objectivism into his bank's policies and how that mission statement and those values were not just floating abstractions. They were real, and they were guided by the idea of success, making the bank a success and making every employee in the bank a success. And that's how he communicated to his employees, and he expected them to integrate them. All right, let's see. So this is just an introduction. Read Ayn Rand, read Leonard Peikoff, listen to Leonard Peikoff's lectures, listen to his courses on any one of these issues. It'll broaden your world dramatically beyond what I'm providing you here. These are very much introductions. All right. Okay, and I'm looking forward to getting feedback from Troy about how he's enjoying these, how these have met the purpose he set out for them. All right. Let's see. We've got a bunch of super chat questions. Let's start with the one that put the most dollars behind it. The hard left in Oregon didn't decriminalize hard drugs because they wanted to expand individual rights. They did it because they're nihilists who think easy access to hard drugs will further erode moral values in our society. It's freedom by accident. Yes, I know. The people who've expanded the use of marijuana is the same way, right? You get these expansions of freedom by accident because they want to use drugs, because they're nihilists, because they're self-destructive, because of all kinds of things. And that's why, to me, fighting for decriminalizing drugs for the user is not interesting. I'm much more interested in decriminalizing drugs for the trader and the producer, because that'll reduce violence, it'll reduce police corruption, and it'll actually have a bigger impact on individuals' lives. I mean, how much impact does decriminalizing, let's say, cocaine, I don't know if they did that, in Oregon, for the user make? It's still criminal to sell it. It's still criminal to trade it. It's still criminal to produce it. So the gang wars are still going to continue. The prices are still going to be high. So do we have that much freedom? Yeah, you have the freedom to abuse yourself, but that's not that big of a deal. My whole point about decriminalizing drugs or legalizing drugs is to legalize the entire supply chain so that we get the criminal element out of it. We get the mafia out of it. We get organized crime out of it. We get the violence out of it. I don't care about the users. I have no sympathy for the users, no interest in the users. Now, there's certain drugs, maybe psychedelics, where arguably if they legalized, there are certain uses for them, like in psychiatric treatment. I don't know, maybe. But there's no use to heroin or cocaine. The only reason to legalize it is, the principle of individual rights, right? There's the principle again. You might not like drugs, but it's a principle. But it's the effect that it has on violence in our society. It's the effect it has on innocent people who get caught in the crossfire, and it's the effect it has on police corruption. Those are the things. Those are the things that are the reason to do it. And yes, decriminalizing drugs in most of these states, including all the marijuana ones, is a little bit of freedom by accident, and it's not a lot of freedom because again, the use is not where the real freedom is. All right, what do you make of Dave Hammond and Andrew Bernstein's evidence of voter fraud as to why Biden won? I don't know. What am I supposed to make of it? Ask them. I see no evidence. Nobody has presented me with any evidence. I can only judge what I can judge. So from my perspective, yeah, just ask them. Ask them what they make of it, because I don't make anything of it. And stop asking me questions about other objectivist intellectuals. It's not interesting, and doesn't serve a big purpose. And, I don't want to be put in those kind of positions. What do you think? And do you think Michael Sandel took UNCOS seriously? Yeah, to an extent. I think he was intrigued. I think he was a little interested. He's asked for what we thought of the whole thing, comments, and so we're going to send him something. He's going to get something in writing. So, yeah, I think so. How much? I don't know. How big of an impact? I don't know. It's hard to tell. My hope is that he'll be willing to do some kind of public event at some point. Do you think Joe Biden will forgive student loans to solidify the millennial vote? I don't know. It's a very, very difficult for him to do. I have anger veins. I don't have any anger veins. Where are my anger veins? Somebody says I have anger veins. I'm looking. No anger veins. Now, pot would do nothing for me. Nothing for me. Just to, dull my senses, which is exactly the opposite of what I need. I need my senses about me all the time. It's very difficult to forgive the student loans. You alienate people who've already paid it, including many millennials who might have paid it off or might have paid portions of it, big portions of it, and suddenly it's gone, and some people benefited and other people didn't. You add amazing amount of debt. Right now, the interest payments that are being paid on the student loans go towards the federal budget. So where do you get that money that you're not going to get from the students paying their loans and paying interest on them? That source of revenue is gone, and you have to print up a lot of other money. There's going to be a lot of pressure not to do that. Joe Biden just appointed Janet Yellen as his Treasury Secretary, and I'm no big fan of Janet Yellen's. She was chairman of the Federal Reserve. But Janet Yellen is not MMT, and she's not a physical print money, no stop, no consequences. She's too much of an economist. She knows that's BS. So she is likely to be a lot more conservative in terms of policies that just involve massive increases to deficit spending. And already they're going to do a COVID stimulus. They're going to do infrastructure. They want to do health care. They want to do climate change. I just don't think there's enough money, enough bandwidth for them also to forgive student loans. Of course, I also think that you need Congress to do that. And Republicans will have the Senate, so I don't think it's doable. And a lot of Democratic senators don't want to forgive student loans. Is the alt-right dead? No. The alt-right is everywhere. The alt-right is alive and well. It's just morphed into different things. You've got on the intellectual side, quote intellectuals, you've got the whole Bronze Age pervert phenomena and the whole nationalist conservative phenomena, which is not quite alt-right, but it's close. And BAP certainly is very close to alt-right. But the national conservatism isn't alt-right all the way, but it's certainly close. So to me, what's happened to the alt-right, it's been mainstreamed. Then you've got things like QAnon, which to a large extent is alt-right. And it's morphed. But it's the essence, all those ideas, the elements of racism and anti-Semitism, the elements of conspiracy theories, the elements of hating everybody, except, I guess, Trump, the nihilism, that's all there. It's just morphed into other parts of the right. And those parts are all as strong as ever. And the neo-Nazis and some of them pretended to soften it up and became Proud Boys. I'm not saying all Proud Boys are neo-Nazis, but some of them are. And so they have spread their wings. They've gone into different spaces. Richard Spencer's still there. Nick Fuentes still has a large following online. Nick Fuentes is a real anti-Semite and a real racist. And he's still got a big following online, right? So, yeah, I see them being mainstreamed, not anything else. Is Dave Amanone objectivist physicist? No, there are a lot of objectivist physicists. He was both a physicist and, a good philosopher and integrated the two in unique ways. But, Keith Lockitch is an objectivist physicist. Amanda Maxwell is an objectivist physicist. And there are a lot of them. There are actually a lot of objectivist physicists. Why aren't there any big objectivist names in physics? I don't know. Why aren't there any big objectivist names in business? Why aren't there any big objectivist names in math? Why aren't there any big objectivist names in any field? Ask your fellow objectivists. Don't ask me. I wish they were. I hope one day they will be. And I'm pretty convinced one day they will be. And let me put it this way. We're not going to be successful. We're not going to change the culture until we have objectivists who are big names in fill in the blank. And many of those blanks. What's your take of an individual rights and human rights? Those words are thrown around to justify anything people want as a policy. Drives me nuts, I swear. I talked about this, what was it, last show or 2 shows ago? I mean, individual rights are the political foundation of a free society. Individual rights are the bridge between morality and politics. Individual rights is what it's all about, what politics should be all about. But they need to be properly defined. And nobody throws around the idea of individual rights properly. If they meant it in the sense that the Founding Fathers or John Locke meant it, then that would be great. But nobody does. Nobody throws it around in that sense. I actually find it unbelievably frustrating that nobody in our political world today talks about individual rights. Nobody. Certainly nobody on the left or on the right. Certainly Donald Trump never did. And neither did, most of his opponents in the primaries. But individual rights is the principle on which this country is based. It's the moral principle and the political principle on which this country is based. It's the most important concept in politics. And the only role of government is to protect individual rights. But you have to understand what those are. They're not stuff. I have a right to food. Give me food. No. You have a right to act in pursuit of food. And as long as you're not stealing it, committing fraud to get it, you have a right to try to pursue whatever food you want. And the people are willing to sell to you voluntarily. So you don't have a right to stuff. You certainly don't have a right to other people's stuff. You have a right to act free of coercion in pursuit of your rational values. That's what individual rights mean. Human rights are more ambiguous. Human rights are used in a much looser way. And I don't use the term human rights because of it, because human rights are now, a right to a job, right to a particular temperature, climate, a right to to minimum wage, a right to health care, a right to education, a right to things. That's, there is no such thing as human rights. Human rights are individual rights. There's only one type of right, and that is individual rights. There's no group rights, collective rights, human rights. There's individual rights. Let's see. What was your interpretation of the fate of Eddie Willis at the end of Atlas Shrugged? It was sort of an abrupt ending to his story. I think I get Rand's point, but I was curious on your take. I mean, I agree with Rand's point. Rand's point is, even somebody as good as Eddie cannot survive cannot survive in this world without the geniuses, without the great men, the great producers. And he is the victim. He is the victim of the world in which he lives. And without their help, he cannot rise above it. Now, there's a sense in which, nobody can without John Galt and without the ideas, and without him bringing forward. And you know, I like Andy Bernstein sometimes says, you know, Eddie Willis has powerful friends. They've all, you know, they'll come and find him. They'll save him. Maybe. And that would be nice to think of it that way, that John Galt will fly in, pick him up, and take him to Galt's Gulch. But the point Rand is making, and she makes this she takes her philosophical points that she's making in a novel and takes them seriously and takes them to their logical end. That's why the ending of We the Living is what it is. And here, Eddie is the good guy, but not the brilliant genius producer. And therefore, he is the victim of the world in which he lives. And he can't, by himself, get himself out of that situation. And very few people can. And if he's going to be saved, he's going to be saved through the help of those geniuses, of the Galts of the world. I think that's the point she's trying to make. And I think she does it. Stuart Margolis wrote on transgenders, critiquing objectivists for being harsh on trans people, and said he disagrees with Leonard Peikoff on this issue. Where are you on this? I'm probably somewhere in between. I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the issue. I have sympathy for transgender people. I feel, to some extent, feel sorry for them. I only know one transgender, a man who converted, became a woman, and lives as a woman, and I think has done the hormones and all the other treatments necessary. And, you know, I've spent time with her, and she's great. I mean, I don't think she's particularly happy necessarily, but that's because she's, you know, there are issues. She's got issues. I mean, I don't think you can be a transgender person without having issues. And I don't think the operation solves those issues. And I do find, as Leonard does, the operation, there's something really nihilistic about it. And there's a fight, there's a battle, but that battle is psychological and it's real inside these people. And, you know, mostly I feel sorry for them because I don't think there's a way out. That you think you're something different than you are, biologically. That is very, very difficult. No, I don't know Blair White. I know somebody else. And the transgender woman I know who, she's Anglican. She's quite religious. It's just interesting. Yeah, I'm, you know, so it's hard to tell. I think it's a very, very difficult, psychologically difficult, and in other ways difficult thing to do. By the way, 2046, I didn't throw it out, but you just did. Yeah, I was trying to be careful. All right. How would you define populism, and do you think a competing worldview might take the center stage under Kamala Harris, Joe Biden administration? I mean, populism is purposefully, in a sense, undefinable. Populism is a vague political view that is purely pragmatic, that holds no real principles, that is inspired by emotion, not reason, fact, but by emotion. Inspires by emotion, not reason, fact. So it's a non-ideology. It's an anti-ideology. It's in a sense the manifestation of pragmatism combined with the riling up of large numbers of people around an emotional plank, not a ideas or policy plank. I mean, I did a show early on. I mean, that's the best I can come up with on populism. I don't think it means anything, really. There's no there. It's whatever. You fill it in with. But it's always identifiable with emotion, with fear and excitement and big promises, and it's always associated with a charismatic leader who inspires people around promises that are detached from reality. It's not always authoritarian. Sometimes it manifests itself through the democratic process. Do I think a competing worldview might take center stage under Biden Harris? I don't know. One would hope, but it's hard to be optimistic in a world that is so infused with pragmatism and it rejects principle and rejects principle on principle. What is this going to be competing worldview? I mean, they tried a competing worldview, which was the Tea Party. The Tea Party seemingly had a competing view, and it folded, it melted, it dissipated. And partially it was a lack of leadership. It got no cohesive leadership. Its leaders failed it completely. And ultimately the Tea Party became Trumpism and became a movement around Trump. So, no, it's complete. I don't see where it would come from. I think it's too soon. I think ultimately, yes, but it's too soon. Was Keynes a fascist? He had a preference to the German edition of general theory in which he almost supported the Nazi state. I don't think he was a fascist from everything I've read about him. He was certainly a statist, but, a relatively moderate one when it came to these things. So I'm not an expert on Keynes, but I don't think he actually held fascist ideas. If you're pro-central planning in any level, the inclination towards fascism is there. Right? The inclination is there. All right. Hi, Yaron, big fan. Just purchased the Fountainhead. Great. I will see if I like it. I hope you do. I'm sure you do. You will. I like how objection is like libertarianism. How like objectivism, I guess you're trying to say, is like libertarianism with the philosophy background. Not sure if I agree with you on the environment. All right, we can debate that sometime. It's like libertarianism, but not really. Because it's built on a philosophical ground. Its views on government and its views are very different than most libertarians. So it's very different than the anarchists, certainly. Right? All right, let's see. Yeah, I wanted to tell. So we're doing this new thing. I'm hoping to start it next week. We'll see. So this is the idea. The idea is we're going to host debates, short debates, like 10-minute debates between me and I hope primarily leftist, socialists, statists generally, but pretty much anybody. We'll host debates on topics. Any one of you can apply to debate me on a topic. We will pick 3 members of the audience, and they will be the judges. And at the end of the debate, the judges will vote. And if you beat me, I'll give you $100 based on their votes, not based on my opinion. Now granted, it's biased because people in my audience have a certain bias, have inclinations towards a particular point of view, but hopefully they can be objective. So we're going to have open. I'm trying to get leftists to come, and maybe people on the right to come and do the debates. Short 10-minute debate, maybe with one follow-up question from the audience, opening statements and one rebuttal, but that's it, right? That's it. And I'll give $100 to anybody who could beat me, right? You pick the issue. You pick the issue, but I get to veto it, right? So you propose an issue that you want to debate me on. And if I agree, then we get it debated, but you get to propose the issue. I mean, I know him, his economics. I don't know him as a person. And from his economics, I don't get the sense that he's a fascist. He's a mixed economist leaning towards fascism. Yeah, there are plenty of, anyway. So I'm curious to see how it'll go. It could be a lot of fun. It's, there'll be short videos. There'll be 15 minutes, and that'll be it. We won't have a show afterwards. We'll just do the debate, and we'll put it up and see how that goes. All right? And it'll be a call for people to prove me wrong. Come prove Yaron wrong. If you do, you get $100. All right, and it's open to you guys as well. You can debate me on anything you want. I'm sure some of you want to debate me on Trump, on immigration, but my preference is not to do the debates inside a debate. It's to draw an audience from the outside, right? It's to draw people from the outside to the debate. All right, good. Remember, tomorrow we're doing The Great Reset, Part 3. This one's on inequality. Saturday, we'll be doing Part 4 with Alex Epstein talking about climate change. That's tomorrow and Saturday. We'll probably do a show on Friday. Sunday, we've got a Super Chat Q&A with my contributors, $100 plus contributors, and then we'll do a show on Pride next week. We've also we'll have 2 big matches for the show on Pride, $1,000 for the $1,000 raised, and another $1,000 for 250 likes. We've also got now a match of $5,000 for a New Year's Eve show, so we will be doing a New Year's Eve show. I'll get you more info about that. We'll basically do a summary of 2020 and looking forward to 2021 on that show, so I hope you join us for that. All right, great. Before you leave, don't forget to like the show if you haven't yet. Like the show. And don't forget to support the show. YaronBrookShow.com/support. YaronBrookShow.com/support. I was trying to raise an extra $3,000. I think we're pretty close. So probably need another $500 to $700 to make it. So if any of you are so inclined to increase your contribution or to become new contributors on a monthly basis, YaronBrookShow.com/support. You can do it there, or you can do it on Patreon, or you can do it in Subscribestar, or you can do it on Locals. Any one of those would be great. All right, everybody, I will talk to you all tomorrow. And I actually did pretty well in spite of feeling a little sick. I did pretty well this show, so let's hope that bodes well.